praise to Creator. Peace and love, everybody. Let's give the Creator some praise before we start this lesson. So, a while back, I spoke to you all guys about Napoleon and how the fallen ones helped him take our kingdom and on a big battle. And some even said that Alexander the Great was a son of a fallen one. So we're going to watch this video. This is a very interesting video, to say the least.
Customize and save with Liberty Mutual. Take 96.
Liberty bibbity.
Cut!
This is concerning Alexander the Great and the Nephilim. Prophecy of St. Andrew of Crete, the Fool for Christ, concerning gates locking the Nephilim in India. We know that at least 72 pyramids supposedly closing the gates of these Nephilim. The Nephilim that he couldn't get rid of, he buried and built pyramids over. Now, we know that the ancient Greeks had gone even to the ends of China, according to ancient texts from the campaigns of Alexander the Great. And we even have a beautiful ancient Greek theaters in China to this day. It's as if they were constructed yesterday. They're so Let's remember that King David in his youth had to do away with Goliath. His brothers, Goliath's brothers, 5 of them, 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. They were giant Nephilim, Philistines. And we know that even from ancient Greek texts, we know that the Philistines, it's written in the Holy Bible as well, in the Old Testament, the Philistines came from Crete and they were giants. And these are some of the giants, for example, King Og of Bashan. It's, as we read in the Holy Bible, the Old Testament, he was a giant, the Nephilim, and the Anakim, and King David was one of them. Actually, they were supposed to be done away with. Now, in the campaigns of Alexander, we read that the writers noted what Alexander was doing in his campaigns and also what they saw in these new lands, and they described the abominable races of these Nephilim. Some of them had no heads. The head was in the middle of the body. Some of them had half a body of an animal, half a body of a human. And these were, of course, not human beings. They had to be done away with. And this is one of the tasks that Alexander the Great had. So I have a Byzantine prophecy WordPress translated for you from Greek, and I'll leave a link below for you. It's 65 pages, but I'll read from page 61 concerning the prophecy of Saint Andrew of Crete, Salos, Andrew Salos, meaning Fool for Christ in Greek. And this is called the Andreas Salos Apocalypse, Greek text translation, concerning what he says concerning Alexander the Great and the Nephilim in India. So Nicephorus, on 2 points, differs in a remarkable way from the corresponding passage in Pseudo-Methodius, saying concerning what happens in Ezekiel 38, 14 to 16, Gog and Magog in the land of Israel. Pseudo-Methodius enumerates 22 peoples, 22 types of people. First, Pseudo-Methodius locates the gates to the north, which is the northern location in text influenced by the Bible, Ezekiel 38:15, whereas the MSS of the life of AS place them in Indalia or Kindinos or India. Okay, so these gates were supposedly in India. The first two variants do not seem to make sense, so it would be attempting to adopt India. It's true that no other source, at least among those known to me, says that gates are in India, but as India plays an important part in the Alexander romance, Nicephorus may have put the gates there more or less carelessly. Secondly, the number of the kings and their peoples is 22 according to Pseudo-Methodius, but no fewer than 72 according to Nicephorus. Directly or indirectly, Pseudo-Methodius arrived at this number from the number of barbarian nations which Alexander the Great traditionally was supposed to have subjugated. Ethni varvaron, barbarous nations, and in his turn passed it on to later Apocalypse, who used him as a source. In the earliest work, which is specific on this point, the Syriac Christian legend concerning Alexander, so even the early Christian church was writing concerning what Alexander the Great had done concerning these Nephilim. The Nephilim that we have in Genesis 3:16, Genesis 6, concerning the Nephilim giants. Well, the early Christian church was also examining what Alexander the Great did with these Nephilim. Alexander the Great lived about 330 BC. We know that King David fought with Goliath around 1000 BC, so that's 700 years earlier. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box. Now, St. Andrew, the Fool for Christ, Salos, of Crete, lived about 1000 AD.
Now, we're not going to fall for the Mr. C stuff. They always put their little stuff in there. Now, the truth is that Alexander did kill some Nephilim, but when he seen the Anunnaki with their flying ship, what he described as a cross, which is really an Eagle gold spaceship that is called the Destroyer, that is near Nibiru, even though they still call Nibiru the Destroyer, but it's actually two different things. Nibiru is an instrument that the Destroyer uses. He believed that when he seen that, it gave him permission, and it was a sign that he would win the war against us. Well, Alexander the Great fought against us as well.
Just as a reference, now going to the continuation of this translation, we see that the early Christian church was studying the legend concerning Alexander and what he did with the Nephilims. The number is 24, a number which appears also in other later sources. According to H. Stokes and myself, the writer says this is due to the fact that the foul nations, the abominable nations, is what the Greek translation says, which is, of course, the Nephilim, were identified with the offspring of Japheth, one of Noah's 3 sons, Genesis 10, and thus may have been supposed to represent one third of the 72 biblical peoples. It should be added, however, that none of our sources explicitly allots 24 of the 72 biblical peoples of Japheth. Other numbers, I'm going on, we're on page 62 now, are also mentioned in the sources, but as far as I know, Nicephorus is the only author who says that the peoples are 72 in number. His motive for that is not quite clear. The fact that he does not mention Gog and Magog could indicate that he's thinking not of a fraction, but of a whole sum of the biblical people, which was 72. On the other hand, he can hardly have meant that Alexander excluded all peoples. Probably he's simply using 72 as a traditional round number of peoples, characterizing as os arithmos, osi, amos, thalases, as the sands of the
Learn about crypto and get paid as you learn with Coinbase Earn. We've paid out
as the sands of the sea, which is used of the foul nations, meaning the Nephilim, in the original Greek vision of Daniel. Okay, the Nephilim. The expression sarkos anthropos josos, I understand the raw flesh of men, pseudo-kalisenes, the second Greek vision of Daniel, have simply sarkos anthropon, necron sarkos, dead flesh or flesh of humans. The kithron ikos is dubious. However, the general meaning of the sentence is clear, namely that the sanctuaries will be profaned. Τα ιερά των εκκλησιών ως οποροφυλακίων. Isaiah 1:8. Pseudo-Methodius. The Arabs appear to be in the guise of foul nations. I'm just translating here what this says. Euthemios zigabenus. The exhortation to flee echoes Matthew 24:16, Mark 3:14, and Luke 21:21. Τότε ien dis Iudeas fevgite os taori. So then it refers to the Maccabees when the Lord said, "And you who are in Judah, flee for the mountains. Don't take with you, don't return to your house to take your coat," things like that.
The Creator told the people that, not the Mr. L. Mr. L is the Draco Snake King, the devil.
The following statement that Asia will mourn for the islands and the islands for Asia seems to be an adaptation of the prophecy found in the Methodius words. And going on to this, for the belief that Satan will come from the tribe of Dan, and for his ugliness. And we keep going now, we're on page 63. As to the statement that Christ himself had descended to Hades and bound Antichrist, the text seems slightly...
So, of course, that's a hijack because the reason Mr. J or Mr. C descended into hell because he is the king of the dead. He's not a good guy. He's the son of a devil. So they slipped that in there. She doesn't know, so pay that no mind.
Slightly corrupt, but the sense is clear. According to Revelation 20, it was not Christ himself, but an angel that bound Satan. However, chapter 1:18 says, "I have the keys of death and Hades," indicates that the idea of Christ's ascension to Hades and his fight with Satan and victory over him existed already at the time when the revelation to John was written. A version which is also represented by Pseudo-Methodius and Pseudo-Hippolytus, among others. This belief seems to have been regarded as popular to judge from the commentary of Arethus of Caesarea, Revelation 10:11. There's some Greek here, but I'm not going to read it for you. 10:11. The variants oleno, olenio, oleninon, which appear here, are seem to be the late forms of olimi, but also far as I've seen no other instances of particular forms. They apparently represent a development in the direction which came to a dead end. As in most cases of doubt, I have followed the reading, he says. Now we go to page 64. Nicephorus sometimes pretends that he knew St. Andrew, the Fool for Christ, personally, and therefore some commentators have dated the composition of the Vita to the 6th century. But the life of St. Andrew of the Fool for Christ is fiction, not a historical document. The number of anachronisms show that it must have been written several centuries after the supposed lifetime of the saint. As I've tried to show above, the theory to the end of the world reflects the apocalyptic tradition in a form it did not develop until after the appearance of the second vision of Daniel, dated to the 9th century. In 648, he says that Andrew Salos, the Fool for Christ, according to the sources, Simeon Salos, Simeon the Fool for Christ, lived the 6th century, and his life was written in the middle of the 7th. As the adverb pale indicates that Nicephorus regarded him as a man of ancient times, this is a revealing anachronism. He mentions a church of the Mother of God in Constantinople, Forum, built by Basil I, 864.
So basically, they calling Andrew Michael, Alexander the Great, the fool, whatever that means for Mr. C. Basically, it means that he was a pagan. He believed in a fallen one because he believed that particular fallen one gave him power. And he gave him power over the other fallen ones. Because Mr. C, who is Mr. E, Mr. L, simply put, the head devil will always take down his children to make sure he's on top. He still uses his children today. Even when you watch some of these shape-shifting Draco races or fallen ones, if you will, shape-shift their eyes and so forth, they don't have free will. And some do, every once in a while, turn on the devil because they want to have power. And of course, he gets rid of them. You have some of these artists that y'all think that are artists that are not. Eventually, they start turning against the devil, speaking out and saying stuff that is actually true, that's going on. But because they talk about it, the devil makes sure he makes his call or phone call, the head devil that is, and the rest of the ones follow suit, and they take down their Draco brother because the devil, head devil that is, tells them to. This is why you see a lot of artists go down after they speak out, or even TV stars. Like Goldberg is not the same with Goldberg. You see she's way too big. Whoopi was never that big. As soon as she says something that's true, they take her down.
867 to 866. Among chronological arguments, the reference to the anti-phos, the anti-light that is, may be mentioned. Elsewhere, the earliest reference to the anti-light in Constantinople seems to be Constantine Porphyrogenitos. It's not known before the 9th century, it says here, not before the 10th. Further, the mention of a
you can make contact with these civilizations and you do not need the government. Look at the evidence. It's happening now.
Hertularius Don Plimon in 849. B is clearly anachronistic. On the whole, the author is not greatly concerned with time. At the beginning of the section translated, Nicephorus speaks about the one week symbolically, but we are not told what week he's referring to. Now he says that the conversation has taken place at night, in that night, although we have not previously been told that St. Andrew the Fool for Christ and Epiphanius were meeting at night. It's clear, however, that we shall imagine the conversation has taken place not long before the death of the saint. It's the first in a series of conversations on spiritual topics which form the end of the life of the saint, in which he says farewell to his friend, and it's a natural place for an eschatological message. So then it goes into the index of, page 65 goes into the index of proper names. So anyway, the takeaway from this, because it's a long study here, translation. The takeaway from this is that the Nephilim, Alexander the Great had to do away with the Nephilim. And they were the abominable races, the dirty races of these mixtures of animals and human hybrids, as in the days of Noah, before the flood. And he had to do, so Alexander the Great had to do away with them. And the early Christian church was studying Alexander's campaigns, texts, records, journals concerning these Nephilim races that Alexander's army did away with, and the others that they couldn't do away with, they buried in pits, holes in the ground, and built various pyramids over them. So this is the takeaway from this. I'll leave a link below for you for this. The first pages have to do with prophecies of the end times, if you want to read it. You go to page 20 or something, 18 to 20, where the English translation starts, and you can skim through that if you'd like. So a lot of these cities are symbolic because the saint refers to Constantinople, which is today Istanbul. He refers to Salonika, which was the second city after Istanbul in Christendom. And a lot of saints, very famous Christian saints, come from Salonika. And he also mentions Rome. So it could be could be symbolic cities as well. So the early Christian church knew about the Nephilim and that Alexander the Great had to do away with them. Okay, unfortunately,
Now, it wasn't just Alexander that had to get rid of some, but King David and his mighty men got rid of a whole lot more than Alexander ever could. But the fact is, Alexander the Great did in one of his journals, if you actually read it, I know King Drop and a couple of other cats have exposed this already, that when he seen the Nephilim Draco King ship, the Destroyer, which is a Golden Eagle ship, and it uses Nibiru as a tool and gathers rocks as a storehouse to do a lot of damage to the earth. When he seen the Eagle ship, to him that was a sign that he could defeat us, and he did fight against us. He also fought against Arabics too. That's why she had said that in there. But that particular Arabic, because Arabic is nor here nor there. That's really not important to us. The important thing was that they did fight against us, and eventually, after they did, fight against us as well, they did end up fighting some of the Nephilim that was on Earth, because the head double Draco Snake King did not want to share any power. He wanted the full power over all his kids and even the people that was on the earth. That particular head devil fooled all of humanity. And if you think about it, if all the Nephilim that was on the earth in those days had bodies that could not be penetrated even by bullets unless you shoot them in the head, the only way that a white guy, no disrespect, could take out a bunch of Nephilim demons like that, we had to have some type of technology to defeat the demons, the other devils, and he would have had to get that technology from a devil, because Alexander had no super abilities. Alexander was not King David and his mighty men. They had super abilities. It's simple to see how they defeated them. But when you look at Alexander, you think a white dude with an army with no super abilities could not have defeated them, unless the Draco King gave him power to defeat those other demons so that he can rule the earth by using Alexander the Great and his large army, by giving him technology. Peace and love.